Hi everyone, and welcome back to Guided by Smithwright. Today, I want to spend a few minutes talking about budget evolution, allowances, contingencies, and scope clarity during pre-construction. This is one of the most important conversations in custom home building because it directly impacts planning, decision-making, scheduling, and overall experience throughout the project. One thing I want to start by saying is this: it's completely normal for budgets to evolve during pre-construction. In fact, it's one of the primary purposes of the pre-construction phase itself. Early pricing is often based on conceptual plans, preliminary information, allowances, and assumptions about site conditions or project details. As engineering progresses, site planning develops, some subcontractor pricing becomes more detailed, and project specifications become better defined, the budget naturally becomes more refined and accurate as well. Clients more often than not choose to add scope throughout both pre-construction process and as well as the build itself. That refinement process is healthy and expected in custom construction. As you work through this home building checklist, the pre-construction home building checklist, you'll notice that there are many planning considerations that can influence both budgeting and construction costs later in the project. Things like future structures, additional parking areas, driveway configurations, drainage planning, smart home integration, heated driveways, hydronic floor heat, outdoor kitchens, attic storage, specialty framing considerations, or utility routing. These may seem like small planning conversations early on, but they all influence budget, coordination, and scheduling as the project develops. One of the biggest components of this conversation is allowances. Allowances are placeholder budget amounts used for categories that may not yet be fully defined during early budgeting. This creates flexibility while planning and design conversations continue progressing. As project details become more finalized, actual pricing may either increase or decrease relative to those original allowance figures. Another important thing to understand is that once construction starts and the home begins to physically take shape, clients almost always begin seeing new opportunities, ideas, or details they'd like to incorporate into their project. That's completely normal. Sometimes it's things like adding built-in storage or expanding outdoor living spaces, upgrading driveway materials, or enhancing landscape plans. Maybe it's adding smart home features or modifying your lighting layouts or changing utility locations, refining spaces once they physically can experience the scale and layout of the home. Very often, homeowners simply experience the home differently once it exists in 3 dimensions versus just looking at it on paper. But it's important to understand that changes made during construction can affect both the budget and the timeline. Even relatively small modifications can sometimes create ripple effects involving additional labor, material changes, revised engineering, recoordination between trades, excavation adjustments, procurement delays, or just scheduling impacts in general. That's one of the reasons we emphasize thoughtful planning and documentation so heavily during this pre-construction phase. Another major contributor to the budget creep can simply be a lack of formal documentation. Sometimes clients have a vision or expectation in mind that may have been discussed casually during meetings or site walks. But if it hasn't been formally documented, priced, drawn, or communicated clearly to the project team, there's a good chance it may not be included in the original scope or budget. And while we would love to be mind readers, unfortunately we can't. That's why written communication and formal project documentation are such important parts of the custom home building process. The clearer and more thoroughly the project is documented up front, the smoother construction tends to go later. This helps create alignment between the homeowner, the architect, interior designers, engineers, subcontractors and vendors, and the Smithwright project team. When expectations, details, and planning decisions are clearly documented, it helps reduce misunderstandings, minimizes costly changes during construction, and improves coordination throughout the project. Another important topic during pre-construction is contingency planning. Even with thorough planning and experienced project management, custom homes occasionally encounter unforeseen conditions or evolving project requirements. Examples might include unexpected rock during excavation, or groundwater or random soil conditions. Maybe it's utility complications or engineering modification. Maybe there's pricing fluctuations due to world events or specialty product availability or other unforeseen construction conditions. Contingencies help create flexibility to manage those situations responsibly when they arise. One important clarification is that contingencies are intended for unforeseen construction-related conditions or surprises discovered along the way. Any contingency allowances included within the project are builder contingencies and are not intended as open allowances for owner-directed upgrades or finish enhancements or discretionary additions during construction. Client-directed changes or upgrades are typically handled through a separate formal change order process so that the impact to both the budget and the schedule can be clearly documented and understood. And I want to emphasize that contingencies are not about expecting problems. They're about recognizing that custom home building is complex, and thoughtful planning includes preparing for variables before they happen. One thing I'd encourage you to think about is, as the project progresses, is prioritization. Every custom home has areas where the homeowner chooses to invest more heavily and areas where they may choose to maintain greater flexibility within the budget. Part of our role during pre-construction is helping guide those conversations thoughtfully so the budget aligns with both your priorities and your long-term vision for the home. And as always, we encourage you to continue documenting preferences, questions, and planning decisions in writing whenever possible. Clear communication and documented expectations are some of the most important contributors to a successful custom home building experience. Ultimately, pre-construction is about creating clarity, alignment, and predictability before major construction begins. The more thoughtful and intentional this phase is, the smoother the overall building process tends to be later. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.